The moment that stayed with me the most happened in a university auditorium filled with nearly 2,000 people. My mother stood there holding the program, in her shaking hands while the entire room rose for a standing ovation during my valedictorian speech. But the applause wasn't really for her daughter. 'Twas for my aunt, the woman I called my real parent. In that moment, my mother understood something she had never accepted before. She had lost both of her daughters, one to addiction and guilt, and the other to a life she would never be allowed back into. But that moment came much later. To understand it, you have to go back to where everything truly began. I was 15 when my parents decided I didn't matter anymore. My name is Maya Reyes, and I was born with a twin sister named Victoria. We arrived in the same hospital in Vancouver, only 4 minutes apart on a cold February morning. But those 4 minutes somehow defined everything that followed in our lives. Victoria came first, crying loudly, pink and healthy. I came second, silent and blue with the cord wrapped around my neck. The doctors said I almost didn't survive the delivery. Maybe that was the moment when something inside my mother decided I was fragile or unnecessary. From as early as I can remember, she looked at me like she expected me to disappear one day. Victoria grew up being everything I wasn't. She had a natural charm that made teachers smile and adults listen carefully whenever she spoke. She was confident in a way that seemed effortless. By 9th grade, she was already on the volleyball team, popular at school and surrounded by friends. At family gatherings, she always knew exactly what to say to make people laugh. I was the quiet one who spent lunch breaks hiding in the library reading books. Parties made me nervous. Loud rooms made my chest tighten. When my mother introduced us to strangers, she would say, "This is Victoria," and then add a moment later, "And this is our other daughter, Maya." Our other daughter. Those words stayed with me like a label I could never remove. My father wasn't cruel, but he was distant. His conversations with Victoria were full of energy. He asked about her volleyball games, her friends, the boys she liked, her plans for the weekend. When he spoke to me, it felt like he was searching his memory for who I was supposed to be. "How's school, kiddo?" he asked every time. It was always the same question, and he never waited long enough for the answer. I learned that staying quiet made life easier. Invisible people didn't disappoint anyone. The difference between us showed up everywhere. Victoria's trophies sat proudly on the living room shelf. My honor roll certificates stayed hidden in a drawer. When Victoria wanted a new phone for her birthday, she got the newest model. When I needed one, I received her old phone after she upgraded. She wanted to go to a concert 2 hours away. Dad drove her there without hesitation. When I qualified for a science competition and needed a ride across town, I was asked if I could just take the bus. I kept telling myself it didn't bother me. I convinced myself that I didn't need their attention. But the truth was that it hurt more than I could admit. Still, I managed to keep moving forward. Kay studied hard, joined the debate team, and focused on my goal of getting into university with scholarships. I believed that once I turned 18, I would finally escape that house and build a life of my own. Then May 12th happened, and everything collapsed. It was a Thursday evening when I came home from debate practice around 7. Our coach had kept us late preparing for a provincial tournament. I was tired but excited because we were getting better every week. When I walked into the house, the silence immediately felt wrong. The kitchen lights were on, but no one was talking. Victoria sat at the table crying. Mom was pacing back and forth. Dad stood beside the counter with his arms folded across his chest. When he looked at me, his face was colder than I had ever seen. "Maya," he said flatly, "we need to talk." My stomach tightened. "What's wrong? Where were you today?" Mom demanded sharply. "School, then debate practice," I answered. "Why?" Victoria started sobbing again, and Mom wrapped an arm around her shoulders protectively. Dad reached into his pocket and pulled out a small plastic bag filled with white powder. "Do you want to explain this?" he asked, My heart began pounding so loudly I could hear it in my ears. I've never seen that before. It was in your room, Mom said, her voice trembling, hidden in your closet. That's impossible. I don't do drugs. Victoria told us everything, Dad interrupted. She said you've been stealing her jewelry and selling it to buy this stuff. I turned toward my sister in disbelief. Vic, what are you talking about? She refused to meet my eyes. My gold bracelet is gone. The one Grandma gave me. I didn't take your bracelet. It's done the money we found in your drawer. Mom added, it's $240. Where did that come from? I've been saving my allowance for months. I wanted to buy a laptop for university. Stop lying, Dad snapped. Victoria saw you going through her jewelry box last week. I wasn't anywhere near her room. Victoria wiped her eyes and whispered, I tried to help you, Maya. I wanted you to admit the truth. I felt like the ground was disappearing. Beneath my feet, you're lying. All of this is a lie. Enough, Dad said coldly. Pack a bag. The words didn't make sense at first. What? You're leaving this house tonight? My chest tightened in shock. Dad, please. I didn't do anything. We won't have drugs or thieves in this house, he said. You made your choices. I'm 15, I whispered. Where am I supposed to go? That's not our problem anymore. Mom didn't defend me. She stood beside Victoria like she needed to protect her from me. In that moment, I realized something that changed everything. They had already chosen who to believe. I packed without thinking, my hands shaking so badly I could barely fold clothes. When I came downstairs, Dad held the front door open like I was a stranger. He wanted gone. Goodbye. Maya, he said. The door closed behind me with a quiet click that sounded louder than any scream. I sat on the curb outside for 20 minutes. Before I could even think. Finally, I called the only person who might believe me, Aunt Diane. What's wrong, sweetheart? I told her everything through tears. The accusations, the drugs, Victoria's lies, my parents throwing me out. She listened quietly the entire time. When I finished, she said 3 words that changed my life. I believe you. She drove 4 hours that night from Kelowna to pick me up. Aunt Diane was my father's younger sister. The family's so-called black sheep. She had moved away. Years earlier to become a veterinarian and lived alone with a golden retriever named Murphy near the lake. We rarely saw her, but she was the only person who never treated me like I was invisible. When she arrived close to midnight, she stepped out of the car and hugged me so tightly I started crying again. I've got you, she whispered. That night, I left my parents' house forever. The months that followed were complicated with lawyers, social workers, and court hearings. Eventually, my parents signed guardianship over to Aunt Diane. I moved into her spare room and started rebuilding my life piece by piece. School was difficult at first because Victoria had already spread her story. Many classmates believed I had stolen from her and been kicked out for drugs. But I stopped caring what they thought. I had someone who believed me, and that was enough. Aunt Diane supported every dream I had. She came to debate tournaments, hung my certificates on the fridge, asked about my day, and actually listened when I answered. For the first time in my life, I felt like someone saw me. 3 years later, I earned a full scholarship to Simon Fraser University. The day I received the acceptance letter, Aunt Diane cried with happiness. You did this, she said proudly. No, I told her. We did this. Years passed. I studied criminology and psychology, determined to understand how people could destroy lives with lies and assumptions. I graduated at the top of my class and was chosen as valedictorian. During the ceremony, I stood on the stage looking at thousands of people. Somewhere in the crowd, my parents and Victoria were sitting quietly, watching the life they had thrown away. When I thanked the person who saved me, the entire auditorium stood and applauded my aunt. That was the moment my mother realized something she could never fix. She hadn't just lost a daughter, she had lost the chance to ever be my mother again.